Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give folks about 30 seconds to get logged into the Zoom, and then we'll get started. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Thomas Rogers. I lead the K-12 communications team at Whiteboard Advisors. Excited for today's topic. Um, as parents are navigating an increasingly complex school choice landscape, and the information that they receive from schools and districts plays a major role in their decisions. We worked with the Great Schools team on a survey of more than 1,100 K-12 parents about what they're looking for in school information, how easily they can find it, and how strongly that communication quality affects satisfaction, trust with those parents in their communities. Today, we're going to dig into what parents expect, why ease of accessing information tracks so closely with enrollment and satisfaction, and some practical steps that districts can take to provide clear, more comprehensive communications to families. So we're excited to dive in. Let's start with introductions, and I will pass it to Alyssa to kick us off.
Um, Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Alyssa Schwenk. I am the communications director at Richmond City Public Schools in Richmond, Virginia, where we proudly serve about 22,000 amazing students.
Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonathan Garcia. I serve as Chief of Staff at the Partnership for LA Schools. We co-manage and partner with 20 LAUSD schools in Boyle Heights, Watts, and South LA to strengthen excellent teaching, develop exceptional school leaders, and advocate for system conditions that enable Black, Latino, and multilingual learners to thrive. Good to be with all of you.
Marisol, and then John can close this out.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisol Ramos Lopez. I'm the Chief of Communications and Intergovernmental Affairs for the Rochester City School District in Chile, upstate New York. We have a student base of about 22,000 students. We deal with a high special needs population, and we are highly multilingual in our district.
Great. And John?
Great. Hi, I'm John Dean. I'm the CEO of GreatSchools.org. We're a national website that aims to help parents find information about what's going on in schools and help schools share information with parents. I'm excited to be here with y'all today.
Great. Well, John, before we dig into the specific findings, can you give us the big picture about what prompted Great Schools to conduct this survey and what you thought was the most striking thing?
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be a surprise to any of you on the call, especially Marisol and Alyssa and Jonathan, as you just described, that we hear from schools all the time that they want to share more information about what's going on in the schools. So much good work happening that doesn't get captured in in the report card or in how information is shared. We often, boil things down and share a few numbers, but hey, look at all these programs that we're doing and look at all this data that goes on behind the scenes. And we hear from parents, hey, it's really nice to see this top level information, but there's so much more we want to know. So we kind of set out to say, let's try to figure out how that gap between in information sort of is impacting parents and what they're seeing about it. And so we really just wanted to understand, is satisfaction impacted? Kind of what's their perceptions like? And so the most shocking thing, maybe, Thomas, isn't that shocking. I hate to be a spoiler on that, but to say that it's real, that this gap of information or the differences in how parents receive information and experience it has a real impact on their perception of schools, on their satisfaction, on whether they're likely to recommend a school to somebody else. And it's a pretty striking difference in what we saw. And so I think what we're excited to be here today to talk about is some of those gaps, how you all are addressing them, and then ways we can kind of continue to support moving forward.
John, I think you might have answered my first question about the 90% of parents who'd recommend their schools are also satisfied with the communication from their schools, and that striking correlation. I would love to hear from our school district folks. Let's start with Jonathan. From your experience in Portland, how does that communication satisfaction connection play out? And what were some of the biggest communication challenges you faced there?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So when I think back to Portland, what this report really captures perfectly is something that we lived with every day. Families don't separate their feelings about communication from their feelings about the school. So for them, it's the same thing. So when communication is clear, timely, in their language, when it's human, families trusted us, even when things weren't perfect, right? And so when communication broke down, even our strongest schools suddenly felt confusing, or distant. So from my lens, families interpret that as, are they really paying attention to my child or to my neighborhood, right? Are they thinking about my child? Do they see us? So I think the biggest challenge for us wasn't the volume of information. It was the mismatch between how we thought families navigated the system and how they actually did. So we assume that they go to the district website, they read our long emails, but instead families really are relying on parent-to-parent networks, on school staff, and yes, on those dreaded Facebook groups where one dramatic post really can carry more weight than a month's worth of official updates from us. And what I found now in Los Angeles here, I've been in my role just over a year, and honestly across the country, is that this mismatch has only intensified in 2025. For families dealing with language difference or immigration enforcement concerns, unclear communication from schools isn't just inconvenient, it's really creating a sense of vulnerability. In moments of uncertainty, especially with this enforcement activity, we're seeing families looking for signals of stability and safety. And so communication really becomes part of that safety. And I'll add just a personal note here. You know, this year I had an opportunity to foster my two school-age nieces, and for the first time, I was fully on the other side as a parent trying to make sense of district messaging. And even with my background, there were moments when the communication really felt less like information and more like I was being managed. And in a world where information travels so fast, where parents get updates from, again, TikTok groups, group chats, and other before official channels, I think communication can often from the district feel opaque or overly controlled, and it lands differently, and it doesn't build partnership with families. It really builds distance. So that's why I think the correlation this report surfaces that between strong communication and families willing to recommend their schools, it feels so familiar. Communication is often the first mechanism through which trust is built. And so it signals whether school is well organized, families are valued, and whether they're going to support every child. And so when communication is clear and consistent, families feel anchored into the school's mission. And so in so many ways, I think communication really sets the conditions for everything else to work in schools and in districts.
Marisol, how does that finding resonate with you in Rochester?
So I am on board with what Jonathan said because those are the challenges that we are facing. The trust factor and developing trust is the primary mechanism that we're using communication for. What I find the challenge with some of our families is there's transiency and moving. And while the child remains at the school, their address, their phone number may not be updated. And so we depend a lot on our social media and the parent word of mouth communication. And this is why strengthening the communication at the school level is so important. Parents don't necessarily want to hear from the district level, even though we're constantly sending out messages. We know in our district that if the caller ID is the school's number, the a parent picking up the phone to listen to the call or to engage with the call is higher than when it comes directly from the district. The other issue that we face with our multilingual families is communicating with them in their own language and making sure that we're engaging them really in an authentic way so that they feel like we are listening to them, taking their feedback, regardless of the language they speak. And so, as we are working to build that trust, as we are working to ensure that families are sending their children to school in spite of some of the fears they are facing, that they know there's a human component to what is happening with their child at school, that there are adults who care for them. And that's where the recommendation of schools comes in. When families feel engaged, when they feel trust, they are going to recommend schools to their family members or to others in the community.
And Alyssa, same question for you. How does that resonate? What challenges do you see in Richmond?
Yeah, I think that resonates quite a bit. So Richmond, if you know anything about the history of Virginia, has obviously a long history of segregation and marginalization of Black and Brown communities, both legal and de facto segregation. And we're a small district, we're about 22,000 students. And many of our students, their families are from the area, have grown up in the area. So you are really often grappling with generations who have gone to the school and have a relationship with the school community in ways that are both positive and negative. And so, what we really try to do and affirm as a district is like, number one, our role as communicators is to tell the full story of what's happening inside of our schools and within our districts. And a lot of what's happening is great. So, like, really making sure that we are building that trust in, like, on a person to person level by reaching out about the good things, by talking about the good things, but also as a division where, folks may not always think that we're, getting the fair shake in the media, that what's being told on the news is representative of their experience. On the flip side, I will say, like, relationships are the heart of what we do as communicators, and nothing that I say and do from the division perspective will counter how a parent feels when they walk into that school. So, as a division, our motto is to teach, lead, and serve with love. And we really do try and orient everyone around that goal so that we have those relationships, so that parents have somebody within the school that they trust, that they can go to, that we can support them when something is impacting their family, when they are having a challenge or a barrier to coming to school. And the other thing that we really do try to emphasize, like, within our communication to parents, because it is such a trust builder, is to really emphasize consistency. If something happens at one school, we have the same communications protocol than if it happens at another school. Parents all talk to each other. There are those Facebook groups, there are those WhatsApp groups, and we want them knowing that if something happens in school, even if it's a fire drill, or, we have to go under 20-minute restricted movement because something happened outside the school, they're going to hear it from the school. And even those small things in the moment go a long way toward building that trust, knowing that how their kid classroom is handling communication, what they're being told is really consistent with their cousin or their friend's child, does go a really long way to building that sense of, like, hey, I know what this division stands for, I know what this school stands for, and I have expectations around how they will treat me as a parent, as a stakeholder, as the most important person in my child's life.
How do you, and this is a follow-up, we made it 14 minutes and I'm going off script. How do you support, building level leaders on being better communicators? Like, they don't generally come to being a school principal from a communications and marketing background, but like, how do you support them in that, like, professional development of, like, communicating with families? And anyone can take that if they want to.
So I can take that one because since I've been in this role, one of the things that we've tried to do is standardize some of the language and communication. To Alyssa's point, making sure that the language is the same across the board when you're communicating to families, when you're communicating to staff, and even when you're involving the media, it's important the same language is used. One of the things that we developed here in Rochester is standard operating procedures that includes a section with potential calls that you have to make to families, whether it's a lockout because there was a situation happening outside of the building, you are having a fire drill, or a child happened to bring in some brownies that were laced with something we don't want our kids having, right? And so that gives them the opportunity to review prior calls that we've made. All of these are situations we've been in before. And then we have team members who are always readily accessible to help principals in crafting the language for their staff, for families, and even in how we are communicating this to students, because they talk to one another and they go home and tell the story about what happened. I want to make sure that what the student experienced is what we're communicating to the family, so the story is the same.
We do something very similar. I think I have 80 scenarios of something that has happened at multiple schools. We've had moments where, something new happens and we'll craft language, and then 2 months, 3 months later, a similar incident happens, and we'll add that to the playbook. It's constantly evolving. It's very standardized. And I think from the principal perspective, what they have shared is they are more than happy. They know that they are that leader in their school community. They care a lot about the parent experience. They just sort of need that like scaffolding and guidance to know what they should be saying, what they should not be saying. So once we have that playbook, they're more than happy to run with it. I'll touch base with them if they need any support, if there's something going on. We recently switched two-way communications tools. So, yesterday I had a principal who had to send his first urgent alert, called him up, spent 2 minutes walking him through where to find things, where to go, and he was off and running. So it's really just providing those supports and providing that clarity of expectation.
So one of the findings was that 70% of parents who were unlikely to recommend their school said they'd missed an opportunity or deadline due to unclear communication, compared to just 26% of satisfied parents. John, from your perspective, what are the implications for districts of that finding?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those staggering things, but also, it sort of highlights things that we know, right? If you understand what's going on, you feel connected, you get those opportunities, you go like, oh, I was able to take advantage of all this incredible work. So you can see where that may happen. And I think one of the things that we've learned is that what a district in our school is saying, like I was listening to you guys talk about all these things you do, I was like, this is an incredible amount. And what the parent might see on the other end is just a little blurb about what happened, or they might read like a discipline statistic about the district at the end of the day or something, right? It gets boiled down. And the same goes for, they find out that they missed an enrollment deadline because it was somewhere and they didn't know about it. Or there were opportunities to take different kinds of courses, but they were asking a question that maybe didn't quite match up with what they read. And so I think one of the things we know is listening to parents and trying to see what they're asking for, continuing to provide that information through a number of different channels. We've got to kind of chip away at finding the opportunities to present information. So, we hope that we can help with that, but we also know that this is that space, as each of you guys have said, that like everything you do is sort of breaking that down piece by piece, trying to say it's not just come look at our course catalog. It might be, hey, what are you asking about? You're asking for a rigorous experience for your child. Let us show you how that matches and how this course will bring that to you, so that you don't just register for the courses you thought and then figure out that you missed something afterwards, right?
Marisol, have you seen examples where poor communication led to families missing out on programs? And one thing I noticed was it's much more common for high school parents to report missing out on information and opportunities. Curious, like what your experience with that is, and how you've worked to close those gaps.
Well, certainly with high school, you don't backpack information the way you do with elementary school. So once students get into the middle and high school levels, we have to look at different ways to connect with families. What we are looking at is what are our timelines for those deadlines, and how soon do we start communicating them, and what methods are we using? And so for us, a robocall has been a very heavily utilized mechanism for communication, but we see a fatigue that happens with families who are getting robocalls from their school, from the district. We have the opportunity for our district-wide parent groups to send messages, and so you miss it. It's not that the intentions are good, and we are trying to make sure that we communicate through all channels, but there is a communication fatigue that happens. What we're starting to employ a little bit more now is texting, where we're sending a quick text to families to remind them that there's a website that they can link to right from the text to show them the information that we are sharing. We're translating that. Our district does all district communications in the top 5 languages to ensure that we have involvement from all facets of our families. It's not a perfect science, and you're always going to be in a situation where someone did not see the information, but what we're utilizing through our website, through social media channels, emails, and robocalls, and the important communication that happens from school to home, we are seeing some improvements in that area significantly. But it's still a big challenge for all of us.
Alyssa, I know at the beginning you were talking about just the diverse student population that you have in Richmond. How do you think about ensuring equitable access to information, whether that's across languages, digital divides,
Mhm.
parents who might be, not have working multiple jobs and aren't able to go to evening events? Are there particular practices you've adopted?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Richmond Public Schools' demographics have definitely shifted a lot over the last 15 years. I think about 7 years ago, we had 8% multilingual learners. Now we're up to about 1 in 4 of our students are multilingual learners. So we've definitely added translation supports, changed and updated our language practices to be more inclusive over that time. We've also added a lot of programming that is specific to the student need, which indirectly is specific to the parents' needs. If you have a child, coming at the age of 14, maybe 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. high school is not the best structure for them if they need to work or they have family responsibilities. So we've really increased at the high school level, especially our programs that really meet students where they are at and thereby meet families where they are at as well. And this year we hit our highest graduation rate in, I think, 10 years. I should know that data point since I did those slides in that flyer. But that's because we are really working to deeply engage families where they are at, making sure that we've got those trusted relationships. And from there, it's just a lot easier to communicate with them. A lot of, again, what we do is really creating consistency in our expectations. We communicate a lot. We have a 3 times per week newsletter that goes out to every parent in the district. We used to have a 5-day-a-week newsletter. So there is a lot that's going out at the top level. And then we're also looking at student level data, at school level data, and making sure that folks are availing themselves of the tools, communicating with their parents, reaching out. And again, like really sharing the full story, making sure that we are talking about opportunities, making sure that we are talking about the great things that are happening in a classroom, whether and just getting that out into the community more really, I think, changes perceptions and engagement, things like that. And then with parents, when we have, registration deadlines, app deadlines, things like that, for high schoolers, we're looking at really specific grade level communication. So, like every 2 weeks, starting in January, we're hoping to send out like specific junior communications to juniors and seniors in high school. Have you filled out your FAFSA? Have you registered for courses, things like that. So we're really trying to think about nudge strategy, really trying to think about what is the little thing that we can give you now that's an action item to move it forward. We also, when we do events, when we do enrollment events, or any sort of thing that's inviting parents in, we also think about what are those parental needs when they're coming to an event. So we'll have childcare, we'll have multiple language supports, things like that. Like we're trying to make sure that whatever barrier as a family is facing, like we are talking to them, we are working with them, and we are partnering around that challenge so that they feel that they can participate and engage fully and meaningfully in that activity.
Um, the survey showed that parents want more comprehensive information going beyond just like, here are the test scores. They want to know what are the extracurriculars offered at each school? What are the student supports, social services? Jonathan, what kind of questions did parents most frequently ask you when you were in Portland that maybe weren't in the like standard, go to the district website, here's what you find? Uh,
Yeah, I think, one thing I learned quickly in Portland was that families aren't looking for spreadsheets, right? They're not looking for a list of things. They want to understand the experience their children will have. And so the questions that I, heard most often were really deeply human ones, right? Will my child be safe? Who will notice if something is wrong? How will you support them emotionally? Are there clubs, sports, art, something my child can get excited about? What does the path to high school, to college, or a career actually look like? None of that, as you noted, none of that shows up in a state dashboard, right? And honestly, even our own district communications often don't speak to those realities and those questions. And so another layer that the report really hints at is that families are really navigating a total different information ecosystem. We know a perception of a school is shaped just as much as a neighborhood Facebook post or anything the district publishes. And so one dramatic video, as I shared earlier, in a hallway fight can drown out an entire year of strong teaching, of caring adults, of student growth. And so frankly, schools serving the most marginalized communities are often the most vulnerable to that distortion. And we've seen that over decades. So when families come to us with questions, they're not just comparing programs, they're trying to make sense of competing narratives, rapid information flow, and in some cases, outright misinformation. And all of this is happening at a moment when the noise around public education is louder than ever, as Thomas, you pointed out at the beginning. We have budget cuts, declining enrollment, talk of layoffs, funding cliffs. Even for those of us stepped in these issues, the conversation can feel overwhelming and abstract. For parents trying to look out for their own children, the scale of it, millions here, billions there, can feel distant and really technical. But underneath all of that, the real question is simple. Will my child still have access and opportunity? Will the adults in that building show up for them? And what parents ultimately want, and what this, I think, survey really reinforces, is that confidence is that what parents ultimately want is confidence that their children will be seen, that they'll be supported, they will be challenged, they'll be protected, and that they'll be able to succeed. And that's the deeper question that they're asking every time they're searching for a school or they're looking to learn more about their own school community. And so I think our communication, our transparency, and our storytelling must meet them where they're coming from.
If I can piggyback on that, Jonathan, one of the things that we've started doing is using student voice to share their thoughts on that, to share that information with families. We're communicating a lot more directly with students in middle and high school because times have changed and it isn't the parent who's dictating a lot of the decisions. Students are making decisions on where they want to go to high school, what's going to happen after high school. If they're athletes, they're better understanding what the requirements are going to be for graduation. And so incorporating student voice into it really elevates the level of trust because the parent is hearing from their child or a child within the system that is experiencing this. And students are no wallflowers. They are going to tell us what they want and what they need, sometimes more forcefully than the parents will. And so we are incorporating student voice into all of the decision making that's happening, and more importantly, how we're communicating it within the school level, but also to families in our community.
We got an audience question about, do any of your districts incorporate student-led communications, and how can schools and districts leverage that students' technological abilities and center student experiences in their communications practice?
So we do it through our student-led Congress, and each school has a leadership group within that. We also know that they love social media and want to be featured and want to be seen by their peers. And so a lot of times they come forward with ideas and they share it. We have a group called SALT, which is our Student Athletics Leadership Team. And they're specifically looking at what's impacting students in athletics and how they can move from being high school athletes to being college athletes. And so their role in that is pivotal when talking to elementary school students, or even middle school students, to start looking at what the requirements are and messaging with that. And so that's something that we are doing and learning from significantly.
Yeah, so in Richmond, we have what's called the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council, which is a couple of students from each high school, and they come together monthly. And one of the things that we do with them is they have sort of a year-long project that they are very involved in the design and then the implementation of something that impacts students. So last year, they actually organized, it was really cool. They were like, lunches could be a bit better. And we're like, heard. So they organized a food fair with like 30 merchants who came in, and we ended up adopting 10 of the dishes into our lunch program, which is launching next, and that'll be launching in January. And this year, they're helping to co-design our PTSA process within each school. So the students will be both in the driver's seat in terms of like what should a PTSA be doing and advocating for within the building, but then they're also the messenger to their parents, to their teacher. So it's really being designed around that student experience. We've also done on social media a lot of similar to Get Ready with Me or Day in the Life videos when we're doing high school enrollment season. Last year, we did a really popular series of reels where a student from each high school we don't allow cell phones in schools. So they were followed around by our photographer for an entire day, sort of their day in the lives. We've done a lot of students in our CTE program showing everyone how they repair an engine on a car or use their welding skills to build a grill, things like that. So we really do try and find and highlight things that really focus on what the student experience is and really elevate and celebrate what they are doing each and every day in our classrooms.
Yeah, and I think for us, when I in Portland, we often were thinking about, the students both as the subject of the story, right, promoting, the successes, etc., but also really as students as the audience. And, how is it that we, especially as central office district officials, are communicating directly to students? Marisol, as you pointed out, right, they're communicating, they're talking to their parents, and so how do we make sure that there is a consistent, reliable source of information coming from the district? And so whether it's on social media, whether it's on emails, et cetera, really trying to go directly to them as an audience. And I think most districts don't often think about students as an audience, right? You think about the parent, you think about community at large, but what would it look like for us to just sit for 1 second and say, what would a student want to hear? What would a middle school student want to hear, right? What would an elementary student want to hear? And then how do you tailor those messages? And again, there may not be your primary audience, given, our families tend to be primary audience, but they should play a pivotal role or an important role in our communication efforts.
One of the things we've discovered in the analytics for social media is we know what our students, what platform they're using. They are using Instagram. A lot of them are using TikTok. And while we don't have a TikTok platform, we message to our students. They reply, they direct message us through Instagram. And so as we're looking at how we're going to message on Facebook to the parents, on Twitter to our business community, and then in Instagram to our students, then we're crafting messages and having them do the same. So we know how to place that. I think if school districts are using social media as a method of communication, I do recommend that you look at your analytics, that you look at the posts that are faring well and the times of day that are the best to post for your students to look at them, but also for your families, the times when people are scrolling, and be very strategic in doing that so that your message hits hard and at the time that you want it to hit.
I attended INSPRA, the National School PR Association conference with one of John's colleagues, John's colleagues in the summer, and TikTok was a hot topic. If districts had one, how they create content. John,
Well,
I saw you come off mute. Is this
yeah, no,
about,
I was going to
are you
say,
launching your TikTok right
no,
here on this
yeah,
webinar?
you heard it here first. No, I have a parent. I have a high school student. I have a middle school student, and I'm on the school board for our K-8 school district in town. And I would say 2 nights ago, I went to the transition to kindergarten, the TK kindergarten parent night. So I was listening to each of you describe all these things you're doing, and I was like, oh, that resonates with me at this level from a parent, from what I hear from them. And um, watching the amazing people in our school district talk to parents about the experience for a 4-year-old, and then thinking about how you're also trying to communicate what's the experience going to be like for a 15-year-old who is determining what CTE course to take to figure out how they're going to pursue a passion and grow. I mean, those are so wildly different, but they're they're all based in kind of how do we describe to a parent and kind of connect these dots between they've asked for something. And Jonathan, I think you said it earlier, you were like, they just want to be seen, they want to be known. How do you tell someone with data on a sheet you're going to be seen and known, right?
That's
You
right.
you make a video to show them that, but you also try to describe all the opportunities they're going to have.
Yeah.
You say, hey, we want to challenge you, and here are the ways you could be challenged. Like we have these so we know that we've seen that it's not perfect, but then you kind of supplement it with maybe it's the TikTok videos, Marisol. I don't think you want to see me doing that, but I appreciate that you are.
Yeah.
Are there any like things that you found were a common request from parents, the type of information that was surprising, where you're like, I mean, beyond like school calendar changes and that type of thing, was there anything that was unexpected?
There's so many unexpecteds that come up, right? When you are trying to reach an audience with one message, but there are multiple age ranges and groups. And so we depend heavily on some of the feedback that we get from our students. We know they come back and talk to their parents, and we're hoping that some of the communication that we send out becomes the dinner table conversation about what happens next, what's happening at the school level, what games are happening. So there's so many different things that we are communicating to families, and it's the most important thing for us right now is to make sure that when there is a crisis, that we are dealing with that crisis immediately, because we are never going to beat social media. You are never going to meet the folks who listen to the scanners and post on their sites every day, and then that gets reposted. And so for us, developing a strategy for crisis communication where I'm not thinking I'm going to be in competition with the social media sites, but we are going to have a mechanism in place whereby 15 minutes at max, when a situation happens, we start communicating with families. They're hearing from all the other channels, but they're also hearing from us. That is very important.
Yeah, I
I
would.
think for oh, go
Oh,
ahead,
go
Ella.
ahead.
Well,
Um,
I was gonna say, well, go ahead. I'll
no,
go.
you go ahead. I'm about to change topics.
I think for what's interesting, I think as I reflect back on the last 5 years post-pandemic, I think many school districts, school communities, especially, large urban districts, have experienced many similar issues. Whether it's COVID, then there was a period of a lot of school shootings or shootings near schools, right? There was a lot of, and now, when we went through a teacher strike a few years ago in Portland, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I underestimated that the amount of how much uncertainty plays in how much a district should or should not communicate. And so I wrestled with, I think, anyways, I'll stop there. I think that was very clear to me over the last 5 years, is that uncertainty is often your a challenge, right? And then being able to communicate that back.
Well, because with uncertainty, people start to fill in the gaps, and I want to make sure that those gaps are filled by us and the communication that we're trying to send to
That's right.
families.
Yeah. I will just add that as a district that had a very, very high profile tragedy that we needed to crisis communicate both in the moment and then over the course of a year, that uncertainty and that information vacuum is so critical just to get in there and to start, even if you can't say everything, saying what you can say in those moments, I think is also really important. And I came on a few months after we had our tragedy, but we've become really intentional about sharing what we can share and being human about what we can't share yet. And even just getting out there helps tamp that down in our experience. But to this point around misinformation as well, I think one thing that we are working towards as a division, and we're on a journey, is there are a lot of ways and places for parents to get information, including often different ways and places within a school. One teacher may prefer one app. One teacher might WhatsApp the parents. The principal might, have one other way of doing it. And then the division has, our big two-way communications platform. And I've sort of really landed on the perspective that there's never going to be one perfect tool to communicate in every single circumstance, but having just one tool and folks knowing where to go and who to go to and being able to build that habit of where can you get information, where do I go to seek out information is so helpful. Because if you have your website being updated by one person and then your school website updated by another, and then teachers on 5 different apps, and all of our athletic programs are on a different program, parents feel really overwhelmed. It feels very fragmented to them in terms of what their experience is or where to get information. It really messes with your SEO in terms of like even which calendar on your website version is up to date. So we are really trying to be intentional about that change management of getting folks across the division to be using one tool, like 2 tools. It helps cut down on our human error because, oh, hey, I updated this calendar in 3 places, but not this one place. And then you get a call from a parent saying like, well, on, the school's Facebook page, it's this date, not this date. Or my classic, every year before conferences, we get a, do we have school on conferences? Because one calendar 3 years ago said that we did not. So really just trying to have fewer places so parents build that habit of knowing where to go, and your team is able to cut down on those human errors of maybe just not posting everything that you need to post.
Well, I have one last question that I prepared. And we've got some great questions in the Q&A. If you have any, drop them in there. Um, John, GreatSchools has an exciting new feature, Claim Your District. Builds on the Claim Your School feature. I think when we were looking at the numbers, about a third of schools have claimed their profile since the feature launched across the country. Now, hopefully making Marisol and Alyssa's jobs a little bit easier if they want to claim their district. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the tool? And then I'm going to ask each of the panelists, like, what would you want parents to see first on your profile on GreatSchools? So you can think about that while John's describing it. Give you a little bit of a little thinking time.
We're going to do user research while we're here. The team will love it, you guys. No, I think, Alyssa, everything you said, I was kind of giving snaps to, resonating so much with like, there's all these different places and there's not one platform, but also we know that when a parent might be coming to a platform to get certain kinds of information, we want to make sure it's supportive of where you are. Each of you has your district with your constituencies. We get tens of millions of parents across the country every year coming, asking us similar types of information. And one of the things we know is what you all are doing was really important, as I said at the beginning. So how could we create an opportunity for you to communicate that better with them? And then ultimately for us to be able to help you see the types of things they're asking us about. So we're starting with this Claim Your District tool, right? So that you might be able to go in and say, okay, here are some programs that we're offering district-wide. Here is some data that we want to share with you that might not get captured elsewhere, right? Marisol, you might be really proud of, maybe it's performance of some group, maybe it's a program you're offering, maybe it's scholarships, different information that's not being captured somewhere, and you want to share that. We have a tool and a space for you to be able to share that on the district profile and with schools across your district. And we know that that's what parents are really asking for. They're looking for that deeper context, right? You want to be able to tell them more about some information that's already out there and say, hey, this is how you might interpret or how we see that and what we're working on. We wanted to give you a space to say, let's add context to the data that's on these profiles. So we've added that in. It's all now live on greatschools.org. You can go in about halfway down the page and claim your district and go add that information. And we hope that we'll be learning from you about what you're trying to share with them, as well as learning from parents about what they're doing with the information you share. And we can create a feedback loop that will help you all out.
Great. And we'll start with Alyssa last time. We'll start with Marisol this time on like, what are you putting on your Claim Your profile first?
So for our Claim My profile, I want to focus on the student experience and the joy that's experienced every day in our schools. We have fantastic services. So one of the things that we know is we're an academic organization, right? Our job is to graduate students and to teach them and have them learn, but we're also talking about well-rounded citizens and students that are strong in social and emotional well-being. And so one of the features that I would love to claim is the mental health and telemedicine partnership that we have with our two major hospitals, where we are providing services. We have medical centers within our schools, and if the schools don't have a medical center, there is a telehealth and a mental health support. We have student involvement in that, and we have a mental health committee that's formed by students, and they're educating the adults that are coming in to provide services. So the claim is we want to educate our students and also make sure that they're strong, well-rounded individuals ready to serve their community.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think for me, is I would want to make sure, make it easier for families to see the future their children can have in our schools, right? And so I look at opportunities, arts, sports, electives, dual language, CTE, college pathways, the supports that matter most to working families, right? Mental health resources, tutoring, after school care, special ed services, plain language, in language explanations of academic data. We all talk about SBAC, we all talk about these results, but what does it all mean? And what does growth actually mean, right? We always often talk about hitting the proficiency, but we never talk about whether our children are evolving, growing. And as Marisol noted, I think a strong sense of culture. Who are the adults in the building? How do we build belonging in the school community? And what does partnership with families look like? And so, again, I think it's all about really, in a sense, reclaiming the narrative of the school and the school district with more information than in an easy accessible place.
Melissa?
I'm going to go a little bit old school. And what I think we really love to emphasize with our families is teaching. What does great teaching look like? What experiences they're going to get from teachers in our school? We have seen incredible gains year over year now in our reading and math test scores. We are growing at a rate that's 5 times as fast as the rest of the state when it comes to reading scores for our multilingual and economically disadvantaged students. And that's because of the investments that we've made in our teachers, in our curriculum, in our fidelity to strong practice. And so just making sure that parents know that when they walk through the door, they're getting an extraordinary education and what that looks like. Because we know that once parents know what good looks like, they're going to expect good and they're going to demand good if they're not seeing it.
Turning to audience questions, the first question is from someone who I know a few of us on the call have just think so highly of, Tanya Harris at the Council of Great City Schools, who actually introduced me to Marisol and is a terrific person. Tanya wanted to know, can you provide a specific example of an effective parent communication initiative that you implemented in your school district? So, whoever. Marisol, do you want to start us off? Or?
Sure. So for us, it is texting, right? It is adding text messaging to the platforms that we utilize because we know that families are on the move. And while we have many families that move around, their phone numbers usually stay the same, as do their social media handles. So one of the things that we're fortifying is our ability to text our families and the mechanisms that we're utilizing through social media to get greater engagement. And that has yielded positive results for us in that we our analytics and our numbers every week that we're reviewing them show positive improvement there. I am hopeful that at some point text messaging can become more interactive so that we can have families click on a link, engage with us, provide feedback, and then we can return that information and the data to them more readily. I think this survey is critical in helping school districts understand the best methods to use with families. And, it's reassuring to know that families are going to recommend our schools. And that's, in our field and working with crisis and dealing with different issues happening at the school level, to hear that a large percentage of our families are going to recommend us and they're going to pick us is a wonderful statement to the work we're doing.
Jonathan, Alyssa, any examples that you guys want to share?
I think one thing that we've had a little bit of fun with this year is really trying to be authentic on social media in ways that also tie back to the core business of what we do. And we have seen success there where it's just showing different sides of our teachers, our superintendent. Our superintendent is now using his personal Instagram, which, is linked to our school Instagram, to like show lessons and get in there with what teaching and learning looks like. And we are seeing that just sort of like behind the scenes of a district, like it is really resonating with students and with parents. And I don't know if people always in leadership feel comfortable kind of showing that human side of themselves or showing like themselves as they were, as teachers, things like that. But it's been a really wonderful way to get folks seeing just all sides of us.
Yeah, and I appreciate that last comment, because I think when I think about my experience, humanizing the central office was such a big piece of the communication work, right? Because we're just a big bad district. There's just this thing over there that is making decisions, and that behind those decisions are real humans with real experiences. And so how do we humanize that and make that stronger connection with families?
Yeah. So another question that we had, and I think we had two sort of similar questions. I'm going to pull them together. In the realm of school choice, how, and as school districts think about balancing the narrative between like, you have these neighborhood school options, you have these magnet options, like choice within the district is something I've heard from large districts have a bunch of. How do you balance that? Do you talk about both? Are you prioritizing? What are the strategies and approaches that you've seen that both produce higher student enrollment and retention for your schools?
We just launched our school selection process. And what we are finding is that providing information on the programming that's happening in the schools, I'm going to hold it up only because I'm so proud of our magazine. This is a digital magazine that we also have that has links to each of the school pages. It provides information and we feature our students in photos. I'm going to show you another one, right? This is an important tool for families to understand what's happening in our schools. And with the choice of what high school you're going to go to, what programming is being offered, where is the International Baccalaureate program or our early college school, what opportunities there are for families to go and visit the schools, what opportunities are we creating to have students shadow other students within the district. Again, having that student voice be part of the decision making is so important. And so putting all of the options on the table and doing so at different public events to give families the opportunity to come in at different times of the day or at different days during the week is super important in making sure that we're reaching families where they are. The hierarchy of the district and you coming to us and now we share the information and we're the end all be all, that doesn't happen anymore. Families know they have choices, public, private, parochial, or charter. And so that's one of the competitive mechanisms that we're using to stay on top of the game.
I think we're in a really unusual but exciting place where we don't, about 90% of the children in Richmond City go to Richmond City Public Schools. We don't have any charter options. We don't have a ton of private school students attending private schools. So your choice is usually you stay in the city or you move to a different division. And we've seen actually some reversals in sort of national enrollment trends. Our enrollment is slowly but steadily ticking up as more parents are choosing to stay in the city or to stay with RPS for longer periods of their high school career. And we're also having a little bit of migration into Richmond, a lot of it from Northern Virginia. But what we are doing right now, which I think is really cool, the overwhelming majority of our students have always gone to their neighborhood school, whether that's their elementary school, their middle school, or their high school. And we are at the start of the second year of a 5-year, really comprehensive high school redesign process, whereby every school is going to have a theme, every school is going to have multiple pathways that they can explore within the school, really close ties to careers, whether that's going to, a lab and being a nurse hands-on, taking those practical courses, and then getting an internship. And so what we have an opportunity to do right now is we are helping coach and condition people to think about open enrollment in new and different ways based on what they are passionate about, based on where they would like to go with their career, with their 18 to 25 years in life. And so it's been really cool as we've started these parent engagement meetings and just like socializing this to see the questions, a lot of which are like logistical, like how am I going to get from north side to south side every single day? How does this all work? And getting to explain that, but also getting to demonstrate through partnerships, through curriculum, like going down to middle schools and being like, hey, we're opening a new arts high school next fall. Like, you can take podcasting. Like, do you want to test out some podcasting equipment? Like, you could take ballet. Like, do you want to go to the ballet? And just really bringing in these high impact opportunities for students and families to say, like, hey, I want that. And just think about each of these schools, which still will serve their neighborhood, but will have a theme in like new and powerful and exciting ways. And just, I'm really excited that we have this opportunity to have this citywide conversation over what amazing pathways look like, what the future of a thriving region looks like, and really start it with our K-8 students.
What are some resources, or where do you turn to for resources, particularly for, we had a question from a smaller district, but like, I know Inspira is a big association that shares a lot of resources. Are there places you would recommend other school district comms people turn to for advice, learn from their peers? Any recommendations on that front?
Hoya at the Council for Great City Schools.
I would also say that NSPRA has local SPRAs that school districts can join. And those are the school public relation groups who meet either regionally or for us, it's within our county. And we share best practices. It's an opportunity to meet your colleagues, to commiserate sometimes on issues that you're facing. And the Council for Great City Schools for larger school districts is a tremendous resource and asset. One of the things I do want to give them kudos on is a crisis communication plan they developed and shared with all of the districts that are part of their association. And NSPRA does the same with all school districts.
I'm always just +1 to both of those. We attend webinars and conferences for both organizations. I'm also just a huge proponent of the fangirl email. If you see somebody else doing something that you think is really great, I sent one a couple of weeks ago to one of our districts, our largest districts in the state. And I was like, I love how you guys do your website. Tell me more. Like, how do you set it up? How do you manage it? You guys have 10 times as many schools as we do. I've had folks reach out when they're new to the area, getting coffee with my colleagues in neighboring districts. Like, there's just so much potential for shared communication. It doesn't need to be competitive at all. And always when you are usually a tiny shop, or if you are in sort of that chief or director role, like you are one of one, and having that peer and being able to build those peer-to-peer relationships is incredible.
Well, I know we're at time. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, John, Marisol, Jonathan, Alyssa, for spending time with us today to talk through this. We will share links to the Claim Your District page, a link to the full recording of the webinar, and any of the resources that we shared in the next few days. So thank you all. Feel free to reach out with any questions. But thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank
Thanks all.
you.